Based in Secretariat is based in Hong Kong, and the Global Health Program is housed here in Los Angeles at the University of Southern California. I hope that all of you put yes for wanting to be on our listserv, because we have a lot of activities coming up, both for students and for faculty, which I don't want to take too much time today to talk about, but we have including a new monthly case study discussion group for students on ethics, research ethics. We have our annual conference coming up in November, and abstract submission will open this week, and a number of other activities going on. So this is the Teaching in Virtual Environment series. And oops, I forgot to bring up all of the info on this, but basically this is the final reflection. So let me give you, here we go. Let me share my slides with you. Today we have Ellie Vandegrift, who is one of the key people who has organized this event. And she and I are going to talk about reflections on a year of virtual teaching. So we have survived, everyone. Many of you have made it already to the end of this year. And so we thought we'd just reflect on what we've learned from other speakers, from each other, and how we can move forward. So this is put together by the APRU Global Health Program in collaboration with the Global STEM Education Program at the University of Oregon. And I would encourage you to check out Ellie's bio. She has received numerous teaching awards for excellence in teaching STEM education programs to make science interesting, engaging, and fun for students. Okay, Ellie.
Well, it's my great privilege today to introduce my colleague, Melissa Withers. Today, Melissa is an associate professor at the Keck School of Medicine in the Department of Preventative Medicine at the University of Southern California Institute on Inequities in Global Health. As she mentioned, she's also the director of the Global Health Program at the APRU. Melissa has a PhD from the University of Community Health Sciences at the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health with a minor of cultural anthropology. Her research interests lie in community participatory research, mental health, gender-based violence, immigrant health, global sexual reproductive health, and pedagogical innovation as well. It has been such a delight to work with Melissa the last 9 months on this program. And I see today that we're joined also by many of our past teaching experts. So I'm so pleased that so many of you are able to join us today. Well, I think I'm next, right, Melissa? Do you want to go to the next slide? So our goals for today are to reflect on some of the lessons that we've learned as educators over the past year, and then to consider the ways that we can apply what we have learned to our future teaching experiences. We're thinking about this both as looking backward, but also looking forward. Next slide, if you could, Melissa. Our format, and the times here are rough, but we'll have some time here in expert panel to share some of our thoughts. We'll have time for a small group discussion, and then we'll come back together for the larger group discussion. Our small group discussions have sometimes gone a little bit long. We might shorten that a little bit today so we have more time to hear from all 40 of you who are joining us today. Next slide. There is a Zoom chat today. Please use the chat. Many of you already are. We're going to use breakout rooms. Everybody's found their audios and visuals. And I love attending seminars with a pad of paper and a pencil. So if that feels like something where you want to take some notes, please feel to join us in jotting down some notes today. All right, next. In the chat, we would like to ask you to share with us one lesson about teaching that you have learned this year? It could be something small. It could be how to make breakout rooms. It could be something large about restructuring your class. But what's one lesson you've learned the past year? Michelle writes the value of close communication with students. Michael writes flexibility. Mona also writes flexibility around due dates. Flory says interactive synchronous discussion. Vivian also writes about flexibility and open new doors in education. Lydia says connecting lessons to real life in e-learning. Lamberto says short lectures. Terry writes the value of connecting personally with the students and their interactions between each other. Catherine writes different ways to comment on student work, such as videos. Sydney writes how to utilize different online teaching resources. Judith writes using Google Classroom as a venue for discussion. And Hanshi writes the importance of keeping students engaged through active learning. Great, wonderful. Continue to reflect on those ideas as we go through some more thoughts about what we have learned. Oh, there's some more that are coming in. I want to make sure to get to these. I'll say that one of the lessons that I've learned is that waiting for the chat feels like an eternity, but when I wait, really rich things come into the chat. Maria writes, paying conscious attention to create inclusive classes. Jane writes, recording lectures and upload to our learning system. Bing Bing writes, respect students' opinion. Georgia writes, being able to adapt. Sheba writes, applying knowledge beyond classroom and importance of bite-sized learning. And Michael says, we're waiting for a reply from students. Excellent, great. Melissa, let's go to the next slide. So each of us is going to share 2 lessons that we've learned, and I think there's actually many things embedded in each of these 2 lessons. So as I was thinking about one of the first lessons that I had, it's about course structure. And it was really course structure, and I should have added a couple of extra words here. The extra words that I would have included on this slide are course structure for equity and course structure to improve student learning. This was an image that until about 15 months ago, I had never seen. And now I have been in numerous workshops where people have shown variations of this image. And this image talks about from a 1999 paper on online learning. The researchers Anderson and Archer looked at how to improve the learning environment in online learning for students. And they found that 3 things were really essential. And I've been thinking a lot about how these 3 things that they found for online learning, how essential and critical they are, both in this online environment and as many of us think about some point we're going to be back in a classroom, these same three things hold true. The first is a social presence. How do your students see you as a real person? How do your students see each other as a real person? Where do you take time to get to know each other and have those social moments, whether it's online or it's in person? The second one is creating a cognitive presence so that students have a continuous opportunity to engage in the content. I think about this a lot when I used to teach a class that met on Thursday and Tuesdays. And the Tuesday to Thursday part felt really easy. It was only one day in the middle. It was easy to get assignments. But that Thursday to Tuesday sometimes felt as though students had completely forgotten that they were taking a biology class with me in that interim. So how do I, as the instructor, create structure and assignments so that students are constantly having to engage with that, use their brains, think about and make new connections? And then the third element is about teaching presence. How do I demonstrate that I am part of the class community? How do I tell students when I'm grading their assignments? Do I use transparent assignment templates when I'm designing so students know what's expected of them? Do I use rubrics? Many of you wrote about flexibility in the chat. Am I creating flexibility to deal with the real life challenges that our students face? And I think many of those have been revealed in new ways that many of us have never experienced before as faculty. So this is kind of my first lesson, is thinking about how do we take social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence. It felt so relevant in the online environment. I think as many of us transition back or we stay online, we'll want to continue to think about the course structure. Melissa, can you go to my second slide, please? I have many other lessons too. Melissa and I just felt like we each had to only pick two. My second lesson is about the power of global networks. This is one of the global networks that is such a treat to have discovered and to be a part of. I am very grateful for all of you taking time to come and join us and share your experiences with teaching and learn from each other. I wanted to tell you about two other networks. Melissa and I wrote a chapter together about resiliency in North American higher education, and we're each sharing a couple of the case studies from that. So one of them, the first one here that I want to talk about is the Corona Corps, which developed at the U of O campus as a way to work with the local public health to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. How are we making sure that we know where students are, if they're testing positive, are they getting all the supplies they need? But one of the things that we realized is that other universities around the Pacific Rim were facing the same challenges that we were. It was really powerful to get together with students and with faculty and administrators from other institutions to talk about the ways that we were each handling the complexities of the pandemic in terms of contact tracing and case management, and in terms of vaccines and returning to campus. And all institutions are handling this differently. So it was great to have a network to bounce some of these ideas off of. The second example here is that the U of O hosted a global leadership challenge. It was supposed to be in person in 2020, and we quickly pivoted it to an online learning experience. And students, the yellow dots represent where the students go to school who participated in the leadership challenge. It was a couple of week program where students were given a challenge from, for example, the city of Eugene, where I live. How do we improve the number of electric vehicles that are on the road? And so students worked with an international team to think about how would you communicate that to people about using an electric vehicle? How would you change the signage? How would you change the location of charging stations? So anything that we could do to improve sustainability of the city. Students who attended in person in 2019, one of these events, and students who attended in 2020 online share the same kind of life-changing experience of getting to work and meet in a global community. And so in terms of equity, I think another thing that we've uncovered is that we can have more international opportunities and global experiences for our students that don't necessarily require travel, which means that a wider diversity of our students on our campuses can participate. So those are a couple of things that are on my mind. Again, so course structure and then the power of global networks. And I'm going to turn this over to Melissa to share with us her two lessons as well.
Okay, thanks so much, Ellie. So let's move on here. So many of you mentioned this in the chat, but I would have to say that one of my top lessons has definitely been about the importance of building community. And in the classroom, that includes making sure that people feel welcomed, valued, and connected. That includes giving students a voice, but also choices, which sometimes I hadn't thought about, giving them options to choose what topic for their final papers or something like that. I also set ground rules about what the classroom environment should be. So talking about netiquette, since we're online, but also inclusive ways that you can promote, inclusivity, like gender pronouns, using gender pronouns in your classroom. I also hadn't really considered how much we can use technology to get to know each other. And that includes getting to know students' names, which is actually easier because they're right there in front of us on Zoom, but also incorporating things like Slido or polls. And even though in 1 hour you feel like, why am I going to take 3 or 4 minutes out of my precious 60 minutes to talk about what somebody's favorite food is? But I didn't realize how much that matters in terms of the classroom and connecting students. I also, and some of you also mentioned this, I really realized the value of having students recognize that instructors, faculty are also people, and sort of being in this we're all in it together mentality, and we're all going through challenges, I think has really brought a different level of understanding to the classroom and more humanity. And I think that has benefited the environment in many ways. So being vulnerable is not necessarily a bad thing as an instructor. And then I've been taking a cue from Ellie about doing things like showing up a little early for class. Normally I would show up 5 or 10 minutes before, but I would keep my camera off. I'd have myself on mute, and I would start class right at whatever, on the dot. But I realized that this provides an opportunity to engage with students in a more informal way, and that can facilitate a better classroom environment. So I try to open up my camera and stay also a little bit late for questions. And let me give you a couple of other examples. So as Ellie mentioned, we wrote a chapter where we included 15 cases that we found from universities in North America over the past year that really illustrate resiliency and innovation in teaching in virtual environments. And so some examples, and some of these we've talked about in these sessions, but I just wanted to reiterate, these are some of the ones that I've loved the most. One is the APRU Virtual Student Exchange, which is actually led by the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And it's a wonderful program that includes both formal coursework, but also just informal, what they call co-curricular programs, sort of one-offs even, where students can show up and they can learn from each other and from experts from the different APRU member universities. So in last year, a total of 28 of these courses were offered and about 400 students participated. And some of these just examples are one of the universities in the Galapagos just talked about, who has a campus in the Galapagos, the University of San Francisco de Quito, talked about the Galapagos Islands and Ecuadorian culture and what sustainable development is like. Also, the Chinese University of Hong Kong did a session on picturing Hong Kong through historical paintings and photos. Like that's not necessarily global health, right? But it is kind of cool. And it's a way to connect with students from all over the world and to learn something new about Hong Kong. So paintings and photos by classical Chinese painters and photographers were shown. The Hong Kong University of Science and Technology also offered a really innovative one. I wish I would have attended, but it was a mapathon where it provided the opportunity for students to work together to digitally connect and to map out the most vulnerable places in the developing world so that local and international NGOs could use these maps to better respond to crises in the future. How cool. So I thought those were great. Another one that we talked about right at the beginning of these sessions is 55-word stories. So Cesar from Tecnológico de Monterrey brought it up, and I put the link there if you're interested. but I actually use this in my courses, and it's an idea that actually came from the University of Washington at the very beginning of the pandemic. They provided a space where people could just make 55-word stories or poems, and their healthcare providers, and it was a way to build community and a sense of we're all in it together, and to share what was their feelings and what was going on, their experiences relating to the COVID-19 pandemic. I love that idea, and they're very, very powerful. So Ellie has put the links in the chat there. I'd love to have you check those out. I already talked about Slido surveys. Ellie also told me about this idea, and you'll see on the right, upper right, the idea of just having doodling, collective doodling. And I thought this was brilliant. Like, this is just a fun way to have students maybe show up a few minutes early, right? And to get to know each other by sharing this drawing where everyone can start filling in and doodling while you're waiting for class to begin. So I love that idea. And then finally, another one that we used in our chapter is, so a lot of students who were entering as freshmen at USC were not going to be able to come to campus. And so that was sad. And so what they ended up doing is some students decided to build the USC campus using data from Google and other sources, and build a campus in Minecraft where students could actually in Minecraft go around and visit all of the traditional, like the points of interest, like the Tommy Trojan statues, and kind of really be able to get to know what the campus and interact with each other through a game. And so I thought that was so innovative and interesting. Moving on to my second lesson, and this is more pedagogical, is Constructivism. So this is a learning theory that I had not really heard much about or contemplated before, but the idea is that students are not just vessels where we should pour in information and they should memorize what we're saying to them, not just imparting our wisdom in that way, but rather really taking their previous experiences and knowledge and building on it and new things to construct knowledge. So the idea is that learners create their own understanding of the world based on their experiences, and they interpret things differently. So learning should really be situated or occurring in a contextual way and in an active way. It also says that learning is very much directly connected with other people, and that our peers, our instructors, our family, these people all impact our learning. So students don't necessarily, and I'll show you this, don't necessarily learn isolated facts and theories in one little piece, but what they are going to really remember is to learn in ways where we connect things to things that we already know, or to our own beliefs, or what we've experienced. And so these are the things that are going to stick with them. It also says that learning is very much personal, that students take pieces and put their lessons together in a unique way and build upon, again, their previous knowledge and experiences and insights, which are all important foundations. So I have to make a confession to you all. I hate group work. Okay, I was a student who was like, oh no, every time I was assigned to a group project, because you know there's always one person who does so much of the work and there's always one slacker, and I tend to avoid that in many of my classes. But this really has convinced me that learning really should be done in an active and sort of, you know, interactive way, because knowledge then can be shared, and each person's own experiences and knowledge will then enrich the learning experience of another. So it's actually much more meaningful when students are engaged in problem-based learning. They take a more active role in learning, but that they're also interacting and sharing this with each other. So that was something that I really had to learn and to embrace this year. So some examples of that from our chapter are things like having students be peer instructors, using this moment and COVID as a teaching tool, and in examples of contact tracing, like Ellie just mentioned, the use of real world scenarios in teaching. It also says that you really should help students learn independently, not just have them memorize, but make the material really relevant. And in global health, wow, what an opportunity to do that over the past year, is to really, you know, make visible what we're talking about when we're talking about social determinants of health or infectious diseases. So I guess, and these were some examples of what the traditional classroom is like versus a more constructivist classroom. But I wanted to also share just what we wrote in our chapter, and maybe once the book comes out, we'll have a big launch or something. But what we wrote is that these lessons provide evidence that universities have taken advantage of the resources available to them as institutions of higher education, including bright minds, adept researchers, shrewd innovators, and pedagogical and technology expertise, combining that with tenacious and resilient students. So I certainly have been so impressed with how much we've been able to accomplish, and how much innovation and resiliency we found. And I would like to also acknowledge, as Ellie did, many of the instructors that helped us are here, including Kate and Vivian and Mona and Michael and Maria, and I'm not sure if anyone else has joined right now, but so many people, and all of you who have in the breakout room shared your own examples. So that's what I wanted to say about my lessons learned.
Thank you, Melissa. I thought of another one as you were reading that last little bit, is how difficult this has been for our students and how difficult it has been for us. So just to acknowledge that too, because I think that that's part of the resiliency, is that we're still here. All of you are still here doing more professional development even after this difficult year.
Absolutely.
Let's do some breakout room questions. 3 questions that we thought were pertinent today. The first is, we know there've been a lot of teaching challenges, but where have you found moments of joy? The second is, what new teaching strategies have you tried that you want to continue when we go back to person? And Melissa and I both talked about that, things that we hadn't thought about before that we will now carry forward. And then, what have you learned about yourself as an educator? Lots to learn about ourselves all the time as educators, and this is just a really good opportunity to take stock. So I will put these in the chat. And my colleague Yifong is here helping us with breakout rooms. Yifong, have you been able to make groups of about 7 or 8?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, I think we're ready for breakout rooms.
I will just assign automatically. Is that okay?
Perfect. And do you want to do 20 minutes, Melissa?
Sure.
Okay, let's do 20 minutes. And I know some of you may not be able to join breakout rooms. We understand that's fine. But if you are able to join a breakout room, many of you have been here before and you know how rich those conversations can be. Breakout rooms are almost closed. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. We would like to spend some time hearing report outs from each of the groups. I think we forgot to tell you to have a reporter, but hopefully many of you have someone who's willing to report out. And then after we do the report out, we have a couple of questions to think about for the future of these types of events. So I'm going to stop sharing for the moment. And let's see. There was a room that, a room that was Catherine and Liliana, Lamberto, Lydia, Molly, and Myra. Did you have somebody who was willing to share out?
We did not appoint anybody, but we had a great discussion. Liliana was leading the discussion. And so we share a lot of our experience. Like the first question, moment of joy. Generally, we did not find any moment that can be described as joy, but we all worked out. We had some colleagues had some heartwarming moments with the students, got connected, and caring moments. So that's nice. But regarding the second question, I think we have colleagues who would like to use visualization, if I got it correctly, to teach a math class. And she also mentioned, I think it's Liliana, to mention you to use less paper if we go back to in-person teaching. Also thought about using flipped classroom, which is not a new concept to teach case study based classes, because students stay online for too long and they love stories instead of concepts. So that could be emphasized in the future, even in in-person teaching. Regarding the third question, as an educator, I think we all agree that we're all human beings. We're the same as students. As students got limitations, they got exhausted from Zoom, and they don't want to do this. They need a break or something. And as educators, we all got that moment. So we have to understand our limitations. Anything else from room 3? If anything I missed, please feel free to jump in.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, I think that Catherine really well summarized what we talked about. So thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. The next room, and I'd like to ask, this will get more difficult as the rooms go on, but I'd love to hear new things that we haven't heard before. So the next room, Angelita, Eric, Jane, Jocelyn, John, Michelle, and Thomas. Did you have somebody who could report out for your group?
I'll be happy to, and anybody else can please join in. On question number 1, I think you almost mentioned it at the beginning. It's like almost like a vulnerability. I may be mispronouncing that word, which leads to an openness. Both the students and the faculty were vulnerable about the anything from the internet, slow internet, and that happened to a lot of folks. So it was empathy, where we all kind of shared the we understood at the there, and then also I guess the moments of joy were the students' presentations. They came back work. One said the students actually brought their technological ability to help enhance the class, not only make it better, I guess added more information. So that was really, really good feedback there. Question 2, what new teaching strategies? I think a lot of it is saving on YouTube and PowerPoint presentation in future classes. So if a student has to miss or needs to review the lesson,
Oh,
I didn't hear that. I apologize.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, and I guess kind of 3 kind of dovetails in 1. I guess what you learn about yourself, I guess relax, enjoy more. I guess a lot of it is the vulnerable openness, I guess more. We're all kind of going through this together. We're all in some ways struggling, and maybe kind of hitting back to 1 where students are more willing to share, like the previous speaker, I think Catherine said, like they're tired of Zoom, or they're having difficulties before. Maybe they're now more willing to say, hey, I'm having these difficulties, and we can understand and reply back. But thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Lots of really lovely reflections there of the student presentation idea. And Liliana writes in the chat that others in her group also talked about student presentations. Great. The group that was Margie, Melissa, Memphis, and Vivian.
I can share. I started taking notes on the second question. I think, yeah, we had also some challenges in deciding what was joy, but certainly interaction with students and was a big one. In terms of the second, what new teaching strategies? So Vivian mentioned something I really liked, which was they have implemented, feel free to jump in, Vivian, implemented a process where the students actually provide feedback or actually develop the assignments or provide feedback on, and that they're so much more creative and technologically advanced, and really kind of blow everybody's minds about how much they can do. Is that correct, Vivian?
Yeah, well, because with the virtual e-learning platform, we have to convert a lot of material online. So as a teacher, being an old school PowerPoint person, I would not be as creative as my students. So when I throw the topic to them, they could actually quickly prepare a very interactive and interesting and eye-catching micro modules. But we do need to actually plan ahead. So we have like a 4 months planning in order to see the end product. So, and we have constant meetings with the students, and I could listen to them and they could also listen to me, and we could actually work things out together. And I think this is actually a great opportunity to showcase students as partners. And we will continue doing this after the pandemic.
Oh, Vivian, I love the words that you just said there, students as partners.
Mhm.
We're all in this learning together. It's not that us and them. Oh, thank you so much.
So other lessons were also, people wanted to keep technology and to keep the hybrid learning or blended learning, keep using technology. Also, we talked about independent learning and having students really as autonomous learners and not limiting their potential, but giving them the opportunities and that their outputs will be really surprising and really kind of beyond our expectations. And then for the last question, the words, the word that I wrote down from our discussions include things like adaptability to a changing environment, that we've surprised ourselves about what we can, how much we can adapt, resourcefulness, lifelong learners, that we're realizing that we as faculty are lifelong learners and should be lifelong learners and should be constantly learning new things to help our students, creativity, and and to be get into the habit of continuing to evolve and improve ourselves. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Melissa. The next group has Davina, Georgia, Jovita, Leticia, Marianne, and Tracy. Does your group have someone who wants to share?
Hi, we didn't actually assign any group, but I'll be happy to give some feedback. And for other members, Georgia, Vivita, and others, please jump in. I think for the first one, in terms of finding moments of joy, I think we shared in that group that we actually found some, our difficulties with technology, especially some of us a bit more old school, as I said before, but we found moments of joy in the fact that we can, have a laugh about it when we can't manage the technology. It's actually, there's some bonding exchange between us and our students, as they see us as more human. We're not just some figure which stands out there as teaching and preaching at them. We all learning together as well as a common theme in that part. In terms of teaching strategies that we can continue with all the new skills that we've learned. And then sometimes just that role about us being human, that we're trying new things. We try to also keep engaged with our students using new things, and things that have worked out, then we will continue. But what we thought is the most important thing is that human connection, that we think that going forward, lots of online technology and things is great for efficiency, but both teachers and students sometimes can be overwhelmed with all that information just thrown at us. And sometimes we've been reminded that even we don't sometimes see how much pressure the students face when they're in isolation, with that lack of community and people to share with them, that sometimes that we need to check in with them. And me personally, just having coffee with them when the pandemic allows, when it's safe to do so, that's so valued by the students. And just about learning from ourselves, I think people in the group, a very interactive group, people have learned from the students' perspective and also from the teachers' perspective that good things have come out from breakout rooms. Some students are a bit more quiet. But when they've come to the breakout rooms, I think because it's that online interaction, smaller groups, that we've heard that some students who are usually very quiet actually become very perky and actually very willing to share. And that's one of the platforms they're comfortable with. I think we've learned that different things work for different people, but definitely a good mix of the virtual and maybe the online connection is great, but that doesn't supplement for the in-person teaching and that bond between students and teachers. Anyone else in our group can feel free to jump in to supplement. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. I think I'm really struck by this reality of being online and looking for connection, that really human connection, and how I would say that I often think about being online doesn't have a human connection because we're just the little boxes. But I think that we've found that we can build these connections. Out of necessity, we've found a way to build these connections in a new way. Maybe I didn't say that very clearly, but I'm just struck by technology. Technology, is this a way that we can build a connection, even though I keep finding it's lovely to see people in human form, 3D, that's also really nice, but we're still building connections. Room 6 is Concessa, Flori May, Icy, Lydia, Sheba, and Sydney. Do you have somebody who is willing to share? Flori, you're the one who has a video on. Are you willing to be share what your group talked about?
I believe it's just a moment because
I can probably share.
Thank you, Lydia.
Yeah.
Actually,
Thank
our
you.
group first we discussed the challenges, and the challenges is knowing each other despite the non-personal connection. And of course, the challenge also, especially from here in the Philippines, is the connection. But the joy that they have felt actually is the ability to connect through sharing of experience, encouraging sharing of experiences, and respecting their experiences. So that's one of the joys. And the other joy, despite the Wi-Fi Wi-Fi problems, we felt we were able to imbibe in our students the concepts and principles, and we're happy to see, since it is the ending of the semester, we're happy to see that they were able to apply the teachings into their life experiences. But one good thing that Shiba mentioned to us is the discovery of the availability of friends from the local and international arena who can share good perspectives to their students. I think that's one that we appreciated that actually. With regards to new teaching strategies, as Shiba has mentioned, the interactive discussion with different from different friends from all over the world actually, and I think that's all. The interactive discussion and continuing the mandate of the Department of Education in pushing with this e-learning. I think that's all I have taken down from the discussion. Probably my group mates can add.
Yeah, can I add? Okay. So you have mentioned already that Philippines has a very difficult internet connection. So by the way, with this pandemic, it brought us to be an eye-opener, not only in the face-to-face classes that we have to adjust because of this. This is the mandate of our government. So as of now, we are adjusting, and we are doing our best to give our best shot to our students, connecting with them not only in asynchronous classes, but we also try our best to give them time for their asynchronous sessions, because we have to give them time because the continuous use of bandwidth of internet connection would let them a challenge or give them a challenge. So we provide them asynchronous time. That is part of our joy, that we need to have more requirements to check because of this asynchronous sessions. But we are done, as Dr. Lydia mentioned, in the Philippines, in University of the Philippines. We are almost done with the semester, but so the outputs of our students are here. So we can say that the adjustment is very good, and we're doing our best to be better or excellent for this delivery of the flexible learning environment. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lydia and Flori May. Anyone else from your group? I really love this moment of thinking about the challenge that's there and how you've turned that challenge into something to learn from. Oh, students need flexibility. Okay, we'll think about flexibility in a whole new way. I heard that in many of the rooms that I popped in, ways that none of us have considered what it means to be flexible before. And I agree with what Melissa just typed in the chat, such beautiful reflections. We have one more group, and it's Judith, Kumiko, Oivan, Terry, and Young. You have someone from that group who would be willing to share? See, Judith, I know you had your video on earlier. Kumiko did too. Terry, you had your video on for a moment, and Young also did. Well, I see that there's one reflection from that. Oh, Terry, go ahead.
Hey guys, sorry, we're doing our evening family schedule here, so I'm kind of running around. We had some good conversations with the joy. I think a lot of people were talking about just trying to connect with their students in the Zoom, in the breakout rooms, trying to come up with problem-solving strategies, that kind of thing. For me, I think my joyous moment was, it might be a little different because we actually did end up seeing some of our students at the end of the semester in person. So all semester long, we were online with some of our students. We did hybrid, so some of the students were in the lab working, but the groups we called them roomies and zoomies. So we had groups that had roomies and zoomies together. But at the end, we did a poster symposium. So they put their whole project together, made the posters, and then they came together. And some of those students that were online only traveled to San Antonio just to participate with their group. And for me, that day was just amazing. It just was so much fun. The groups were so excited to see each other, and just to feel like their excitement for their project, even though a lot of them had been online the whole time. So it was awesome to see that they actually got this. I can't believe it, and the groups actually really interacted really well online the whole time. And so we had kind of set up some cameras for them to be Zooming with their groups and showing them what they're doing in lab. So they were actually on camera during the whole lab. And so they really were talking the whole semester long. So for me, that was so amazing to actually just show me that the whole semester worked. And we had a few that didn't join us. So we put chairs next to their group and their poster, and we put the laptop up, and they were there in Zoom. So it was just like their face on the computer. So it was just fun. We had a good time. I'm trying to think of some other.
Well, Terry, there's a note from your group member, Oivan Ung, who says, as educators, we have improved so much in multitasking. such as talking, lecturing, thinking and writing, typing while watching over the screen and checking the chat box, immense rigorous working and anxiety levels increase. Absolutely, that too.
Yes, absolutely. But I think everything we've talked about pretty much sums up everything that our group covered. But yeah, it was
Great.
at the end, we kind of just talked about how like this semester or this year really pushed us as well. I mean, it pushed our students, but it also pushed us to really reach out and connect with our colleagues, come up with new ideas, but then to try the ideas. We were really pushed into trying them. And then now we have some new tools in our toolbox to bring on to the next semester. So that's kind of how we ended our discussion.
Great, thank you. I'm going to read another comment in the chat from Angelita, who says, though there are challenges, still we were able to battle them and reach our goal, making our students more interested to learn, because we have done our part in the delivery of the lectures through virtual flexible learning. Our students are very creative and they can create wonderful outputs from our lectures. The joy in me is when they say they learned a lot from my teachings. Wonderful and great feelings. Oh, and Judith says the statement is true. In teaching, we learn twice. Great. We have just a few minutes together. Thank you. Thank you. This is an amazing conversation. We've talked earlier this year about the power of providing reflection opportunities for our students. There's a power for us too to take this moment and reflect. So a couple of polling questions for you, because we're thinking about the future and we're thinking about what to do. So our first question for you is, if APRU is us, we're hosting more events in the future, would you like to participate? Yes or no? Okay, this might be the most fun poll that I've ever done, because look at this. Can you see the results? Never see a poll result like that. Okay, more to come. So I think the bigger question is, what might you be interested in? And we thought of some ideas. And so what topics might you be interested in the future? And you can read through the list here. It should be open so you can vote for as many as you want. And this will mostly give us feedback and information. Let me give you another 10 seconds to input your vote if you haven't already.
Hi, Ali.
Yes.
Are we supposed? I mean, are we supposed to click on something?
Oh, there was a poll. Maybe the poll wasn't showing up for everyone here. I can share my screen. You could also put the ideas, let me go to the right slide. These were the ones that were in the chat, in the poll. And here are the results from this particular group. Again, put things in the chat if you didn't get to participate in the poll. It looks as though there might be interest in almost any of the topics we picked out or we thought about. So if you have other ideas, please feel free to be in touch with us. Our plan is that we'll do once a month in the fall. Dates to be announced soon as we figure out our calendars. Fall North America time. we're almost out of time today. If you could please in the chat share one example of resiliency. Gosh, we've heard so many of them, but I think it's worth one more time, one example of resiliency that you've experienced or observed in faculty or students over the past year. All right, some ideas are coming in. Eric, good participation and staying strong. I wrote continuing to talk about how to improve our teaching and support student learning, even when we're tired and worn out from the pandemic. Today is an example of that. Davina writes having classes online despite heavy thunderstorm. Michael, long patience, long, very long. Melissa being able to still teach and learn while also experiencing illness, death of family members, loss of jobs, anxiety about the pandemic, and so many other worries. Tracy, when technology fails, keep at it, get help, or just keep talking and communicating. Michelle, some of my students had to go to other houses like their neighbors or relatives just to go online. Terry, all faculty and students really stretched their technology skills this year, surviving the freeze in San Antonio, Texas, and loss of power and being in really cold houses for a week. Margie writes, open-mindedness of teachers to adjust to remote teaching allows learners to produce outputs beyond imagination. Jocelyn, ability to deliver course materials, faculty, and course requirements students on time and still stay quite cheerful and hopeful. Jane, resiliency, students and teachers, though in isolation, quarantine because of COVID, infection, or exposure, still participate in class and still teach and reach out to students. Lamberto, being grateful for just being alive. Judith, able to stand amidst challenges. Lydia, waiting for students to be connected and waiting for submission of requirement, compassionate teaching. Catherine, as an educator in the tertiary level, I've learned that being self-aware is very important, as well as with being mindful of my own feelings and be able to share wisdom to my students. In addition, I've enhanced my self-care activities, which is indeed necessary, especially in this time of pandemic. Lastly, establishing and enhancing a positive relationship with others, even in a virtual platform. Oivun Ong, repeat telling the students that they can find help after the end of my class if they slack in their studies. A bit naggy, but it stays and changes their mindset. Oh, and there's 5 more. I'm going to keep going. Is it okay? When you have to leave, you should go, but I'm going to keep reading these because they're too lovely not to hear. Willingness to stay flexible despite all of the challenges of online learning. Kumiko says not to give up. If something happens, ask. Someone always helped us. Angelita, be more innovative, beat trials and challenges, technology, updates, open-mindedness, ability to continue, though there are hardships in the process. Vivian, teamwork and communication, stronger bonding with colleagues and students. And Shiva, with all the technology failures, etc., we will still finish our semester fruitfully and we enjoyed the journey. Liliana, students trying to participate, provide answers in chat, even if they're not always correct, they can still participate the best they can. Melissa, do you have any parting words?
I guess I just wanted to thank you for all the hard work that you've put into leading these sessions, and it's been really delightful to learn from you and from all of the instructors that have participated over the past 12 sessions. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Absolutely. And I want to echo your thanks, Melissa. When we look at our registration, we've had over 350 educators for these 12 sessions from more than 90 institutions and 30 economies around the world. So this really has become a global learning community. I want to thank all of our instructors who've helped. A couple of them are still on the call here. So thank you. And behind the scenes, there's a lot of technical and logistical support. So thank you to my colleagues. My colleague Yifang is here today helping with technology, but there's been many other people. I see Tina from APRU is on here now. So many people have helped put this workshop series together. I'm very grateful for all of you and for all of you for attending and sharing your wisdom. And with that, we will be in touch. We will let you know when we're launching the next phase of this.
Take good care, everyone.
Yeah, take care.
See you in the fall.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you,
Well,
Tina.
Welcome.
Keep in touch through email.
Thank you so much.
We will, Tina.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Melissa. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Tracy.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Ellie, Melissa, Tina.
Bye,
See
Tina.
you.
See you.
Thank you, Ellie, for your wonderful leading, and Melissa as well in this session and in the past 3 sessions. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome, Lydia. I'm glad you were able to join us.
Yeah, I completed the 4.
Wow, amazing.
That's great.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yifang, thank you for helping. I'm going to stop the recording.